Hello everybody. This short video is specifically for my web programming students to talk about next steps and also to discuss what we have been doing and why we can't keep doing it. But you know what, if you're watching this video just from the outside world and you're just kind of getting into web development, this may also be a little bit interesting to you. But otherwise, I'm going to direct this at those that I teach. So what I want to talk about today is kind of where we have been with our development and why it needs to change. And then I'll also set you up for the next steps going forward. Specifically, I'm going to describe how we're going to need to actually start running servers for our actual websites. So let me explain how it is that we've actually been building web pages and looking at them for the last few months that we've been together, if you're in my class. So I'm going to make a little drawing. I'll do this all with visuals today. There's no actual code in this video. I'm going to make a rather abstract drawing of your computer. Okay, here it is. This is your MacBook Pro or whatever it is that you've been building on for the last couple of months. All right, and you've been developing sites by writing basic HTML with some CSS styling and, as of late, some JavaScript as well. And you've gotten pretty good at it. Here's a program running on your computer. This program is your web browser. We've been using Chrome mostly. And when we've been building our sites, what we've been doing up until now, we haven't actually had a server serving any files to our web browser. Instead, what we've been doing is we've just been creating HTML files such as index.html, and say myscript.js, or whatever you want to call it, and other associated CSS files and image files and such. And what we've been doing is just kind of creating those files and just leaving them right there in the file structure of our hard drive. Okay, so this purple box over here, just represents what I call the directory, which is just kind of a fancy word for all of the folders and all the files that exist on your hard drive. Just like, any other file that you save and you go and you open with any typical program that you use. So we've been simply saving index.html and myscript.js and associated CSS files right there in the file structure of your hard drive. And to actually look at those files and use them and implement them in any sort of webbish kind of way, we've been using the fact that web browsers can actually not only go out and visit websites by following URLs in the address bar, such as up here, right? But they can also open files. Web browsers are able to open files from your local directory. And I know to accomplish that, we've all been just kind of like dragging, the index.html file right over to the Chrome interface. But if you're unaware of this, you can actually just kind of go right up to the top here and just I have a Chrome browser open right now, in fact, so you can just go File and Open File. And then you can browse through the directory structure of your disk. And from there, you can open the file that you want to open. And so that's how we've actually been accessing these things. Obviously, 99.9% of the things that you look at with web browsers are not local files on your hard drive. It's just that that's what we've been doing. And in fact, while web browsers will do this, they will open up your local files, they don't really like to do it. And what I mean by that is, okay, it works and it's okay, but when you start to get a little bit more fancy and you start trying to implement some other features, your browser is actually going to complain. And it's going to throw up an error about certain content that it is unwilling to open from your local directory. So, and the reason really is web browsers are not the intention of a web browser. The purpose of a web browser is to browse the web, not necessarily to open up local files. This just happens to be a handy thing that you can do when you're sort of in the early stages of development. But what web browsers really want to do is they really want to make a request to some server somewhere else. And I'm going to just kind of use an arrow to represent this process here. So what your web browser really wants to do is kind of go out to the outside world and just kind of make a request and say, hey, here you go. It's actually, this request has a special name. It's called a GET request because, not surprisingly, you're trying to get a page, a resource, or a web page from some other server that's out there in the world. So I'm just going to represent that server that's lying somewhere else around on Earth right here. I'm just going to call it an external server. This, of course, is the server that is hosting the website that you want to go to. We all know what a server is, so there's no need to really discuss more about what that is. So say that, I want to look at the news tonight, so I decide to go to, www.cnn.com, and I type that up here in my browser bar, up at the top, and there we go. Sorry about that. Let's get back to where we were. There it is. So I go up here in the browser bar, and I type in, I'll open up a new tab, and I'll say www.cnn.com, right? And then there you go. And now I've got the website. What just happened there is that my computer, my web browser specifically, made a request to the CNN computer, the server that's located somewhere in the world. I don't know where it is, somewhere likely in America. And it asked for the index.html page that was in existence on that server. So please give me index.html. And then depending on the nature of that request, if it's formulated correctly, and if the CNN server likes what it sees from my browser, then, and it does, then it will respond and basically say, here you go. And it will actually send back index.html. This is the actual index.html file coming back to my computer. And so this is called, the outgoing arrow is called the request. Okay, and I said it was a specific kind of request. It's actually a GET request. And then back from the request comes a response. And with the response, there's some information that comes first with the response in what's known as a header. The header is basically some kind of key data about the response. Like, here you go. This is a response, and I'm able to respond to you by appropriately giving you what you asked for. It's okay. You get a status back, basically, a status of what's called a 200 status, which means all good. Here you go. Here's the response. I could also, of course, find that I get an error back from the server if I asked for something that didn't exist there, or a variety of things, or if the server is broken or down, offline at the moment. So a variety of responses can come back. But generally speaking, when you get the web page, you get back a header that says, here's all this important information, and then the actual contents of the page come, this index.html stuff, and now your browser has it. And that's the way that the web works. Now, obviously, we haven't been doing that because we've been building our websites, just like I said, simplistically, just right here on the directory of our own computer. And as I said before, there's going to be soon a time when that's going to kind of limit us to what we can do. So the next step is to really get to the point here where we're doing this, where we're running a server that can actually kind of hand us back the response so that the browser can work in the environment that it's made to work in. And so that's where we're headed. Now, here's the problem with that. What I'd love to do is I'd love to set it up so that all of you can actually have and use some external server somewhere to host your websites. Like, I'd love to say, you know what, we're going to go out and we're all going to use Heroku, which, if you don't know who they are, you check them out on the web. It's a great service. There's a free tier. You can use it. You can host your websites right there. You index.html file right up on here. You can even get a little database that you put there. It's great, and it's free until you get enough traffic that they start charging you. So you could do that. We could host our sites on Heroku, or there are obviously many third-party organizations that are willing to accept your money to host your websites. Other ones that tend to have free tiers, Firebase. This is a Google product. Firebase, which you may have heard of, does full web hosting. They're great. Okay, and another common one that I'm actually a fan of is DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean. I don't believe they have a free tier at the moment, so you have to pay at least some small amount, like $5 per month, to use any of their server space whatsoever. And then, of course, there's also AWS, which is short for Amazon Web Services. They're happy to grant you hosting capabilities as well, so you can host your sites on their servers. In fact, what's interesting about AWS is that a lot of these guys like Heroku and even I think DigitalOcean, actually they actually use AWS to store anyway. So when you contract with these guys, you put your sites up there and everything. It's really all hosted by AWS anyway. They're kind of the backbone of so much of the internet right now. You just go direct to them if you want to. I'd love to do that, but here's the problem is that here in the great state of Connecticut, we have issues with student data privacy. And these guys they don't meet our qualifications as per what the state says. So I can't use them with you. At least I can't use them in a mandatory way. I can't stop you from just deciding that, one day you feel like going out and hosting stuff on Heroku on your own, but I can't do instruction with that. I'm going to run into the same problems with these guys here. This one I'm not sure. I'm going to look into. And this one, again, is paid anyway. You're not going to get any significant free tier here, so that's kind of off as well. So what do we do? In the meantime, and this is not by any means that much of a compromise because a lot of learning is going to happen here anyway, and I think everybody does this at some point before they go off-site with servers. We're going to run a server right on your own computer. So your computer is going to play like web browser and server. So you're going to play both sides of it. So instead of hosting files from your directory and just reading them right into the web browser, no, what we're going to do is we're actually going to create and run on your computer a server, a web server right here. So again, back to the abstract drawing of your computer. So now your web browser, Chrome or whatever, Safari is running on your computer. And then you're also going to have your very own local web server running. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow the web browser to make requests to your local server. And as far as your browser is concerned, it'll be happy. It won't think it's really doing anything different than going out to the external servers, these guys out here. It'll just, make the request to the server on your computer, and then the response will come back, okay? And then we can just kind of go on and continue and do everything else that we were going to do with these guys out here. The only downside of this, of course, is that because the server that you're running is local, right? And so you're going to put your index.html here and all your stuff, right? So because this is a local thing, in fact, it's called localhost. This is your local host server. And that's going to be an important term that we use again and again. So because it's local, it means that other people from the outside world don't necessarily have access to your web server that you do on your computer. And if you play your cards right, you can actually make it so other people in your house will have access to that web server if you want to as well. So, your brothers, sisters, and parents, and even friends who are over can actually, get that website off of your computer to their computer from their browser if you want to. But that's not going to work for the outside world because you're behind probably a cable modem and a router. And without some tricky configuration, that's going to be a very difficult thing to do. And many of you don't have static IP addresses anyway. So the whole concept is kind of null and void for that. But the point is, it really doesn't matter because as far as you're concerned, you're developing websites and you're hosting them on a server. It's just your own server on your computer. All right, and that'll let us move forward. So that's where we're headed. And to make that happen, to be able to actually build a web server that's able to sort of dish out the index.html and the myscripts.js and all that stuff, you need some technology added to your platform, be it Windows or Mac. Actually, in theory, if you're using a Mac, you don't, because actually you already have the inbuilt web hosting capabilities in Mac, in OS. But they're somewhat more difficult to use than what we're going to do. So we're going to install some third-party tools on your Mac and on your Windows PC so that it's a little easier to build these web servers. And that platform we're going to work in, that environment that we're going to work in, is called Node.js. And it's right here. And it's a fantastic environment to work in. Node is basically it's a environment for building simple web servers. And you can actually make very complex web servers if you want to with it as well. It's growing in popularity rapidly, and it's arguable that it's sort of taking over the web as we speak. It's called Node.js because you actually write JavaScript to create your server. But that's just a convenience. It's not the same kind of JavaScript that you've been writing here to make your websites with your p5.js animations and all that stuff. I call that client-side JavaScript. Client-side because it goes to the browser. The browser is sometimes called a client. So that's JavaScript that gets enacted in Chrome to make things animate and, script. But with Node.js, the JavaScript is just a convenience. It's just a language that you're using to write a server, but it's not, it never goes, that JavaScript never gets sent to the browser. It's server-side JavaScript, not browser or client-side JavaScript. But it happens to be JavaScript. And like I said, it's convenient. The only reason for doing that is because web developers are used to writing JavaScript because they're used to building websites. So I don't know, I can't tell you how many years ago it was. You can look up when Node started. But, here it is right here, 10 years ago. So when people were sort of mulling around this idea, and I believe it's an outgrowth of Google Chrome. So when people were thinking about, how can we build a server that we could write easy server code for, the idea came up, well, what if we just used JavaScript to do that? Because web programmers already know JavaScript, so they won't have to go learn a new language or anything like that. Prior to Node, if you wanted to write a web server, build yourself one of these servers, you actually had to go and learn another language. Like a lot of web servers used to be written in a language called Perl, which is not quite as popular anymore. There was a time when Ruby was a very powerful language, or I should say very popular language for writing web servers. Web servers have also been written using Python as well. A significant amount of server-side scripting and templating was done with a language called PHP. But these are all additional computer languages, and it's more for somebody to learn, right? So the idea came around about 10 years ago that, since web programmers are already good at JavaScript because they're doing all this browser stuff, let's give them a server-based language, JavaScript, that they can just kind of use to write their servers as well. But it's very important to realize you're keeping the JavaScript world separate, all right? So there's a little bit of a learning curve to using this, to using Node, and I'm going to walk through it with a series of videos. It's going to be different if you're on a Mac than it is on a PC. It's going to be frustrating in the beginning. I'm going to try to help with the videos, and we'll be doing, if you're on my class, we'll be doing online conferencing for this as well, and sharing screens and such to try to get you all up and running. So anyway, I wanted to kind of give you the overview of what's going on. So moving forward, that's what we're all going to be doing, is going and getting and installing Node.js. You can see when you click it, there is a simple one-click download and installer. It obviously guesses my operating system, and I would, if you're following along from my class, I would just kind of take this and do the install here, and kind of not the bleeding edge features. You don't need that. So just go here and go with the stable release on the left here and install it. And that in and of itself is a little bit of a process, and there might be some frustration. I'm going to make another video kind of walking through that install process as well. As I said, it's going to be different on a Mac than it is on a PC. Once Node is installed, then we'll get to the task of actually running a real web server on your computer, and we'll take these files that we had here that were just kind of in some directory somewhere on your hard drive, and we'll actually put them in a certain place so that the web server can serve them, can deal them up, can dish them up to the web browser, right? So I think I'm going to close now, but what I want to say is, if I had to come up with a cool analogy for this that would sort of help you to think about what's going on if you're still confused about the fact that, well, I thought I had the files already, and I thought my web browser was already going and getting my files and bringing them back to me. I've been doing that for 3 months in this class I'm in with you. What are you doing? Why is this different? Well, so here's my analogy, okay? So what I want to do now is make it so that it's kind of like it is when you go to a restaurant, right? So which obviously you really can't do right now anyway, because nobody's going out of their house. But hopefully in a couple of months, when you can go to a restaurant, and I'm sure I'm going to do that the first chance I get. You go in and you sit down and you're the client. The client, that's you, right? This is the web browser right here. And you say, you look at the menu and you decide, I want to get the chicken française for dinner. And so somebody comes over to you, right? Comes over to your table, and the person who comes over to you is called a waiter or waitress, but sometimes they're also called, you guessed it, right? They're called a server, right? And you say to them, I would like, the chicken piccata or whatever it is. For instance, I say I've changed my mind already. I want the chicken piccata. And see, that's this, right? This is the chicken piccata. And this is the side of French fry. I don't know what comes chicken piccata. This is the pasta on the side. This is the salad. Right? This is the chicken piccata with the linguine and red sauce on the side, and this is the garden salad. And so you ask for those things. And actually, a better analogy would be to say, like, I don't know, this is the burger, and this is the ketchup, right? And those of you that really understand what's going on know why I did that, right? Because you get the burger first, and then only after you get it do you realize, oh crap, I also need the ketchup. Yes, I have to go back and ask for the ketchup. And anyway, but the point is, you ask for these things, and so the server actually takes care of getting them from the kitchen for you. Okay, so even if these files are on your hard drive somewhere, let me just erase them from here, right? So let's say that these files are actually still over here. They're these guys over here on the hard drive. But your browser doesn't go directly to them, right? Your browser, you just talk to the server, and then the server, you tell the server what you want. And the server kind of goes over and goes to that place on your hard drive where these files are stored and grabs them, brings them back, and then hands them to you. So the server acts as a go-between, essentially, between you and the kitchen. And that's how we have to do things. What we've been doing for the last, 2 months, 2.5 months, whatever it is, that we've been together, is we've literally been, it's like we went to a restaurant and we just looked at the menu and we decided, I want the chicken piccata. And so we got up from our table and we just walked right into the kitchen and we just went right to the chef ourselves and took the thing and just brought it right back to our table. And you can do that in some places and you can't do it in other places. Pretty sure for the most part, if you try to do that in any decent restaurant, you get thrown out. And so but we've been doing that. And we can't continue. It can't go on indefinitely because, as I said before, there's going to be some protocols and some things happening where the web browser is actually going to be the agent that starts complaining about this behavior of going directly to the kitchen. So it's important that we put that server in the mix. And so that's the I don't know, the conceptual, or the analogous story for what's going on. And so I urge you, I say, as I'm wrapping this up now, go ahead and go get Node and install it on your platform of choice. All right. And then I'm going to come back at you shortly with a video on walking through the installation process and actually making your first Node file. And we're going to have to do a little bit of interesting work in our terminal or our command shell in order to make that happen. For many of you, that's going to be new territory. All right. I'll be back. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.